Every morning in the early part of our davening, we say the Birkas Kohanim, the blessing that the Kohanim usually give us on Yom Tov, or that sometimes a parent gives to a child. And in that brocha, the second line of the brocha goes, Yo'er Hashem panov elecha vichuneka. May Hashem shine His face upon you and show you chen. Chen might be translated as grace or some kind of goodness. So what does this mean, that Hashem should cause His face to shine upon us, or as they say in the more elaborate English translations, His countenance? What does that actually mean? Some of the commentaries will tell you very simply. When you look at somebody's face, you can learn a lot about them and you can interact with them in a very personal way. The way in which we have an opportunity to interact personally with Hashem, in other words, the environment or the medium within which Hashem made Himself most accessible to us, is through the study of Torah. So when we speak about Hashem, so to speak, shining His face on us, effectively what we're saying is that He should allow us, through the study of Torah, to come to have an appreciation, a meaningful and deep appreciation of His greatness. And that would be the simplest way to understand it. But on a more spiritual level, we're taught that there are two ways in which people can relate to each other. The one is a superficial way, and we call that chitzonius, which comes from chutz, the outside of the person. And a lot of our interactions are that way. Hello, how are you? What's happening in your life? And kind of move on. Whereas the word for an internal, deep and meaningful kind of relationship, that is what we call panim, which means internal. And it's very directly related to the word panim, which is a face. That's why when you look at somebody's face, you can tell a lot more about what's going on internally, often by their micro expressions, their non-verbal communication, than what you can even tell by the words that they say. That's why in the digital world, it's wonderful to have the opportunity to connect with WhatsApp and Zoom and Google Hangouts and all the various other things that we have, but nothing beats a face-to-face interaction, because when you actually see somebody's face in the flesh, it allows you a far deeper level of connection. Now, in our relationship with Hashem, very often, perhaps even most of the time, we feel that our relationship is somewhat distant. And there's no blame for this. It's because our reality is very anchored in materialism, and Hashem is obviously infinitely beyond that. So we find it difficult a lot of the time to have that deep and personal appreciation of Hashem. We read about things in books, we hear stories, occasionally we see things happen in our lives that evidence Hashem's existence. But what we ask every morning is, Yo'er Hashem panov elecha. Please allow us the opportunity to see beyond the veil. Allow us the opportunity to know more about you, to relate to you, Hashem, in a far deeper way than what is usually available to us. Now, of course, we have to put in our effort. It's not going to happen by itself. Don't expect that one day, out of the blue, in the middle of the street, Hashem's going to suddenly, say boo and reveal Himself. Our effort is that we daven, we meditate on Hashem's greatness, we perform His mitzvahs, we study not only the Torah in its general form, but specifically the parts of the Torah that teach us about Hashem. What we do know, though, is that none of that will work unless Hashem actually makes Himself available to us, unless Hashem is willing to bridge the infinite divide between the two of us and come into our space. That's what we ask Him. We'll do our part. We're about to embark on davening. We're about to start a day. At least a decent portion of that day will be dedicated to the values that Hashem wants of us. So we ask Hashem, Yo'er Hashem panav elecha. Let our efforts be successful in generating a meaningful and personal relationship between us.